That's an intro right there.
I'm going to take it. That's our intro.
That's it. That's an intro right there, Benjamin Smith.
That works.
Yeah.
He's going to be really upset with himself when he hears this back in his own voice.
Benny's still deciding his movie book club for later in the episode.
I'm just going to be silent for the next hour
Yeah.
while I work on
Literally,
this.
the whole podcast is just going to be him randomly scrolling through Google trying to
comes
figure out
down
his
to,
choice.
I don't know why you're looking through it now, because it always comes down to that last second where you have like 6 different choices in your head anyways.
I need to narrow it down to those 6.
Just pick from your list and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
What an episode we got this week. So many newses. Nothing happened this week, so we're going to have to,
Nothing that we want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
I thought I'd make a caveat because there's definitely going to be someone listening being like, well, actually,
Yeah.
there was news this week.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to research it better.
I did only have a cursory glance.
But Mandalorian happened this week. Benny, let's catch up on that quickly. Connor didn't watch that, so, you let him
Why don't I go first with what I've watched this week, and then you guys can talk about
I think
that.
it's unfair for us to even talk about it if Connor hasn't seen it. I don't think we should say anything except the most general
No.
stuff.
You can't talk
We
about
can't do that.
The joke is I have not seen it either. So
You haven't seen it either?
no.
Oh, I'm going to talk about it then.
Okay.
And then I've seen a lot of horror movies this week that I want to talk to you guys
Nice.
about. We've got Silent Hill review and
The Blair Witch.
The Blaire Witch
Project.
yeah,
Yeah.
another one.
Nailed it.
And then some other crap later. So, what did we watch this week? Mandalorian. I'm going to go first quickly.
Alright.
Sorry.
This is
No,
the
no,
way-
go. It's fine.
Back to Tatooine. I'm going to tell you guys right now. Back to Tatooine, which was a big flag for me. Big flag for me. I was already like, it felt. I feel like you guys are going to say this feels like an episode 5 of last season.
Really? I've heard great things.
I loved it. I loved it, and I didn't think it was my favorite episode yet, but I thought like this is a really solid episode.
But I mean, most people were pretty lackluster on that, like mid-season episodes. So if it's getting generally positive reviews on this one,
There was moments of this where I was like, this feels like episode 3 to me, which was that little water foresty village episode with the ATSD.
Yeah.
And you guys really didn't like that one. And there was like
Didn't we?
elements.
I mean, not as much as the rest, but it certainly wasn't bad.
Anyway, it feels like a little mission. It's going to be interesting how this season 2 pans out. A great little hook at the end. Going to be really cool to see how this one pans out.
Are you back on board?
I was always on board with Mandalorian. I wasn't on board with. Well, didn't I enjoy the season the most?
No, you
My
loved,
Star
you
Wars-
loved
my
season
Star
1
Wars-
of Mandalorian, but in the lead up to this season, you
Yeah.
were so unenthused.
Yeah. And I think that's more so of being a victim of being part of the Star Wars franchise, this show, rather than me taking the
being
merits
a
of
victim
this
of
show.
Rise of the Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yes, the entire
Which I
world
still like
is-
that movie. I still.
Me too.
So-
But it's officially a punching bag, so
Yeah.
just got to go with it.
So yeah, and I also watched a few Wes Craven films because I'm kind of going on this Wes Craven binge. I watched the final Nightmare on Elm Street, New Nightmare, which is the meta one where the film is happening as, you're seeing Wes Craven, you're seeing the actors playing and this movie being made, as well as this sort of other aspect of it. So it's sort of like that wall movie being made within a movie, and we did adaptation earlier this year, and I'm a big fan of this kind of thing. It's super fun to play with, and whilst this film I think does feel very dated in a lot of ways, it feels so ahead of its time in so many areas, and really is not that scary. There's really not that many horror elements to it. It's very much a character study and meditating on a lot of interesting themes, like, does putting out a film such as Nightmare on Elm Street geared towards teenagers, is this a good exercise? Is this healthy for those people? Is it healthy for the actors? Is it healthy for the audience? And there's a lot of characters that sort of are surrogates for certain viewpoints and whatnot. And I think there's like there's a lot of subtext to this film, and it's the lowest grossing Nightmare on Elm Street film out of the lot,
Mm.
and I think there's a reason for that. It's more for filmmakers or film fans rather than your schlocky teenage slasher film. So
I'm assuming that came along after Scream
before,
4.
yeah. So this was 1994, and then I watched Scream 1996, which is really just such a that's like. So if New Nightmare's like the adults meta slasher film, Scream is the teenage um meta slasher film. This has so many references to Freddy, Jason. Characters say, oh, what are you going to do? Not be able to run outside and run up the stairs, and then these things unfold, and it's so fun going back to this film because I really don't remember it, or I don't really, I don't think I'd really put it. I hadn't revisited Scream in probably 10 years. And I have come back to it and thoroughly enjoyed it across every level. And it's funny how it's not really talked about as much, because it feels like almost like the perfect amalgamation or like the perfect love letter to the slasher genre.
There was one a couple of years ago, wasn't there?
Scream 4.
Yeah, and there's one on the way.
Yeah.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah. That was Wes Craven's last film.
Right.
But yeah, good fun, man.
Yeah, nice.
Little
Good to see you're
whodunit.
putting in some extracurricular horror movie work, not just the stuff we prescribe you.
Yeah, it's just like I normally sit around and watch a shitload of YouTube or like podcasts, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna watch a movie now.
Nice.
So it was very, very enjoyable, and yeah,
I've always wanted to see New Nightmare. I've just never been able to get through the entire series of Nightmare on Elm Street.
you don't need to.
I know that you were saying that, and I'm sure it's true. I wouldn't be able to watch like a meta entry at the end of a slasher franchise without having gone through the whole
Just
thing.
you really need to watch 1 and 3,
Yeah.
and then you
I've
go.
only seen one.
I think it's interesting. I've never watched a Nightmare on Elm Street film.
For real.
For real, never.
I would
And-
love to go through those with you guys.
But it's really interesting because I through popular culture know all the mechanics, understand
The Simpsons.
the franchise.
Rick and
I mean,
Morty.
even I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, like I recently rewatched the Rick and Morty episode where it's so seeped into the horror culture that I don't know, I've never really felt a great need to go see it.
I promise you that first one is pure gold. It is a lot more straight than the rest of the franchise. Freddy becomes a lot more cartoonish, and it's the history of that franchise is fascinating because New Line Cinema, who commissioned the first one in 1984, was a really new company. And from 1984 to 1994, they put out 7 Nightmare on Elm Street films. And Wes Craven was only involved with 3 of them. Financially, he didn't get much compensation at all. And just to hear how, especially 4, 5, and 6, they were basically making that on the fly. Like, next one comes out, we need another one in a year. Like, they're making this shit on set, and they get more and more wacky as it goes. I also watched Freddy vs. Jason this week.
Nice.
Which is it's a good time, man. Like that's an interesting time in horror because it was kind of like post Scream, pre Conjuring Insidious, and it was kind of like this sort of vacant, like the Platinum Dunes remake thing was just coming through, and it
It
was
was very self-aware, but at the
Yeah.
same time kind of very
sort of growing pains, figuring itself
The
out.
slasher guys were getting desperate. They were teaming up.
Yeah, there wasn't like a sort of set template in the market, I feel, whilst there is now, or even the past sort of 10 years or so since Conjuring and Insidious. I feel like there's been you can kind of, the market is geared in a certain way that you can make something and hit those sensibilities.
Well, I found
You're
that-
skipping a big, important middle part there that we're going to talk a lot about later, which is the found footage.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I guess we were right in the thick of it then, and Saw and whatnot.
I think one of the big differences that I've found in the last 10 years, and I can only compare this really to like from the 10 years previous, is the quality of horror films. It's okay to make a horror film that is a little bit bigger budget, that isn't schlocky that is like a really well made movie that
Yep.
happens to be a horror.
Yep.
Whereas like when they were doing Freddy vs. Jason and like what was it, like Jason 2000 or like
Yeah.
whatever that was, there was clearly no kind of intent on making a movie like a quality movie. It was pure entertainment factor.
Yeah. But Freddy vs. Jason, I really don't think it gets as much credit as it should get. It's actually a really cool film. It's got some really, really great stuff in there. Not fantastic, but really good ingredients. And Freddy is menacing and humor, and that's where Freddy is lost. Is if he's too funny and he's not menacing, that's where he loses it for me. And then this whole thing got me thinking, like, I'd love to do something like comparing the original Nightmare on Elm Street with the Jackie L. Haley one. So, just these ideas swirling around in my head.
Good idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's me for the week.
Mhm.
Cool.
What about you guys? Benny, did you watch any movies this week?
Yeah, I went to the theater last night and watched a new release film called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Basically, it is a movie about a 17-year-old girl who gets pregnant and has to go on a road trip to get an abortion. It's as cheery as it sounds. And it's really just a completely honest, unflinching look at what that process would be like. And it's quite devastating, but really wonderfully done.
It's a poignant film for
yeah,
the current
This
climate.
week,
I haven't looked up.
all the stuff happening in Poland right now.
I haven't
Yeah.
looked up the actual history of the writer director, but it's hard to imagine that she doesn't have a very close relationship with this story and this subject matter, whether she's been through that herself or a friend or family member or something. But yeah, it was, like I said, it's kind of grim viewing, but I think kind of important as well. It's really good.
Yeah, man. I mean, I went last year to that rally, and actually some action came from it,
Mm.
and it was like a very empowering feeling. So,
You
like,
taking credit? Is this what's happening right
yeah,
now?
I mean, I mean, yeah.
Oh, you're who we should
look
write
at
our
the
thank you notes
facts.
to. Oh, I get it.
Guys, come on, like, let's go. Yeah, but not trying to toot my own horn here, but it was just like, you see these things, and it's like these things are actually happening in the world, and whether you're seeing it on the news or seeing it in art, like that film that you saw, it's important to be aware because, fuck, man.
It's an interesting. Do you have more that you saw?
No, not really.
That's a very good segue into what I saw then.
I'm very interested.
I watched Bombshell,
Okay.
which is the Charlize Theron produced as well as starring film about the takedown of Roger Ailes, who was the CEO of Fox News.
Oh yeah.
Along with
Margot
Robbie,
Robbie, yeah.
and
Is it Nicole Kidman?
Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
That's it. Which is not a movie that I was particularly interested in watching, but I sat down with some people, and that's the one that got picked. I am really glad I watched it, though. It is, beyond anything, it is just a really interesting story to watch. In terms of like actual filmmaking, it doesn't really hit the nail on the head. Like it does lack a little bit in the execution department, but what it lacks in that, it definitely makes up for with impact. This is something that has been in the news for more than a couple years, as kind of more of this dirty laundry gets aired, and to watch kind of how it happens and how it's how you can make an impact, but also how little that impact can mean potentially. It's just a really sobering look at stuff. So
amazing makeup on Charlize as well.
Amazing makeup on Charlize. Very average makeup on.
John Lithgow.
No, his was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman.
Right.
I kept, getting really weirded out. I was trying to figure out whether it was really really bad plastic surgery, or whether they had put on prosthetics. I couldn't tell the prosthetics for filter on, and I couldn't. I mean, Lithgow's is obviously a lot more, noticeable, but in terms of like, I could have seen Lithgow getting that big in terms of like how good it looked. So yeah, whoever did the makeup for that movie is on point. Lithgow really,
Seemed pretty menacing.
oh my goodness, he played that character really well, and he looked, kind of disgusting. It's I think that drives home the kind of, as I said, the impact, because everyone, I've got to give kudos to John Lithgow and Margot Robbie, because I think they both played their
They sold
parts
it.
spectacularly. And that's really what gave the most impact.
Nice.
Great Regina Spektor song in the credits.
There you go.
Just saying.
So yeah, highly recommend that one in terms of impact. If you're really into the science of movie making, maybe not. The other thing that I watched was a Netflix anime. I had enjoyed their previous, I guess, attempt at anime, which was Castlevania. And so they had Blood of Zeus that came out, I think, last week. I got to say, this is fairly average, if I'm honest, and I'm not a huge fan of anime. But this
Netflix made anime?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. This felt pretty average.
Fuck
Some
yeah.
very cool concepts, and it's a short season, right? It's like 8 episodes.
Yeah.
Each one is like, I think, around 30 or 40 minutes long. So yeah, some very cool concept. It's set in ancient Greece. It kind of plays on some of the well-known stories. It kind of, incorporates its own story in there as well. Some interesting lore. That's the kind of stuff that kind of brought me back each episode, is the expansion upon the lore.
Cool.
The actual technical component of it, again, I'm not really deep into anime, but I would say that anyone that is, really deep into anime would probably look at this and be like, this is kind of feels amateur hour.
Yep.
Um,
They're doubling down on anime. I think they're producing 4 or 5 more in-house.
and they've got a whole bunch of existing properties on the platform as well. I mean, I've got to give it to Netflix. They have really, tried to find as many areas that they can expand into genre-wise
Yep.
as they possibly can. They're doing a really good job with the comedy, obviously. That's a huge part of Netflix now. They're doing a really good job with anime in terms of just bringing more content.
Sports, they're really starting to enter the fray with The Floor is Lava.
I was trying to like. First of
yeah.
all, like, I haven't heard of that. Second of all, how have you heard of that?
What-
Like, that's definitely not coming up on your recommendations.
I heard an interesting conversation about like Netflix, in terms of that conversation that we had last week with James Bond. Them MGM trying to sell it on to a streaming platform, and thinking, somebody bringing forward the idea that, hey, Netflix, they'll work with Martin Scorsese, they'll work with big A-list filmmakers and whatnot, but that will happen at the genesis of the project. There haven't been that many annihilations where they've picked up a fully produced thing. They get it from the genesis. So to sort of
no, actually, there's actually quite a few properties.
Are there?
Yeah. So they
but
have,
but not to that level of like a James Bond
No,
or
no.
like that
Yeah.
high caliber A-list Hollywood thing. They're going to try and develop that in-house because they don't want to seem to be a dumping ground for like.
well, I think it's
this
just
sort of
they don't
thing.
get the return on investment for those. Like, I mean, if you're
But I
talking
think
about
he
big
was- he-
tentpole films,
Irrespective of that, from like a branding perspective,
but I think that I still think they would take it, right? If the money was good, I reckon they'd take James Bond. Why not? Because
it's
I mean,
an interesting thought. It's like, is Netflix a good home for James Bond? If
they had it cheap, I have no, I wouldn't understand why they wouldn't take it. Like, if
It's just they've been so good about developing new properties. Like, there haven't been like Amazon Prime and whatnot. Like, if you go to Netflix, like, there's not a whole heap of legacy archive stuff. There's a lot more there's a lot more newer content from 2010 onwards. it's just interesting the value prop that Netflix brings forward. It's not like, hey, you have a database of every movie. It's like, here's Netflix's shit. And a lot of it is Netflix produced stuff, And they've built up a brand over the past 5-10 years where, hey, like the Netflix brand is not necessarily quality, but it'll probably get a conversation going.
It's quantity.
Yeah.
I mean, and fair play to them. I mean,
I love their strategy. Like,
they are pumping out content left, right, and center. And in terms of what you want a streaming service to be, you want it to be that thing that you can always go on to and find new little content.
their analytics must be insane, huh?
Oh, it's kind of bonkers, really.
I'd love to just see like when somebody comes in, like the dashboard for like what was the top, how many streams did the top show get, or like what does
Who's
that
watching
interface
what?
look like for the in-house stuff? That would, if I could just get an hour on that,
Batcave.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
You guys are. I was just reminded the other day, and it's just always so shocking to me in the year of our Lord 2020 that Netflix is still a company that rents out physical DVDs to
I saw
people.
that.
Insane.
It still has that side of the
It's still
business.
got that part of it, which is what it started as.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember who I had a huge conversation about this recently, and I told someone that like their business started out back in the day as shipping out physical DVDs for you to rent.
And this person was like, DVDs?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this was someone that was well older than me, but had not ever heard of Netflix. I don't even know. Did you have Netflix here in Australia before they were a digital platform?
No.
Yeah.
Negative.
So yeah,
Did
it's a bit
you-
wild. I had
You have it here. You live in here for like a decade and a half, man.
but I never knew that they still had that arm of the business.
Crazy.
Highly profitable.
It's wild.
Must be.
It must be at least somewhat profitable.
Yeah, I mean, it's this like when it's like, oh, we don't want to hurt the customers, keep it going for another year.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've still got probably billions of DVDs sitting around that they can keep shipping out.
I wonder if they have like. I was thinking about this with our Silent Hill watch that we did, and it is fucking impossible to find Silent Hill. It's on Foxtel.
I signed up for Binge.
Did you actually?
Don't you just rent it?
No, can't rent
Can't
it
get
anywhere.
it
Can't
anywhere.
buy it anywhere. Can't like.
Oh,
how did
really?
you watch it?
Oh, I think I just found a Mexican rip on YouTube. That's
Fucking
right. Had the Spanish
there we go.
subtitles, and I was like, "Fuck it," who gives a shit?
I mean, for your
enjoy a
information-
movie and learn something as well.
Hey.
There's a perfectly good English rip on YouTube, like really good quality as well.
Maybe that's what I watched.
But you can't remember if it was in Spanish or not.
Maybe I'm just amping up the story.
Did you not watch
Maybe it
this?
was a
I'll
joke.
definitely watch this. Are we moving into Silent Hill?
Well, no, because I mean, when we said there's no news, there's literally no news.
Not one piece of news.
There's bits and pieces, but nothing. Like, who cares?
Nothing that the three of us will talk about more than just
Wonder
saying,
Woman
this
is
happened.
probably delayed again.
Yeah,
Don't get much more mileage out of
that one. Fucking hell.
Anyone die or?
No one of note.
I don't know. Okay.
R.I.P. Sean Connery. A huge presence in the world of cinema.
Huge.
It's the most diplomatic thing
Absolutely.
I can imagine you
I don't want to joke about the situation, but there's got to be something in like
in the middle.
No Time to Die has been delayed so long that James Bond has died. Anyway, moving on.
Silent Hill. This is chosen by the club of movies and books.
It's chosen by us.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's chosen by me.
Oh,
So I
yes,
snuck in an extra pick.
Jeez, such a-
Well, I knew we all wanted to watch it.
The
we've
legacy.
been looking to watch this for years. I
Yeah.
mean, this has been one that George, you have been pretty adamantly against watching again. With, I mean, good reason. There's like this movie for anyone when it first came out is like we would have been mid-teens at the time.
This is 2006, so I was in the
Cool.
cinema. I would have been 15, 16 years old. I went with two buddies, same age.
It's
I
a
remember
gnarly
It fucking got me, bruv. Fucking got me.
it's a gnarly movie to watch.
But it's been a film that really affected me and stayed with me. And some of the images in this, like, I can't escape them, for better or worse. You know what I mean? Like, I think this has actually shaped a lot of my tastes in a weird kind of way. and some sensibilities and whatnot. Anyway, you guys have seen this before?
Yep.
I have not.
Oh, this is their first time.
My first time. That's why this was kind of such a big
Ooh.
deal for me. So this movie, you guys have just kind of talked it up a lot over the years, and I hadn't
Shouldn't
seen
have
it.
done that.
It's
Based off a
it's a
video
video
game?
game movie.
Yep.
It's
Japanese video game?
Yep, poorly reviewed. It's just one of those ones that you'd kind of see around the bargain basement bin.
Yeah.
And it had a sequel a few years back that was meant to be
Worse.
Awful.
Even worse.
So I ended up, strangely enough, watching this at like 4 a.m.
Oof.
today. Because
It's a bad time.
I woke up and I'm like, I gotta watch this movie.
Gnarly.
And it's kind of great.
It's weirdly great, isn't it?
It's like
What else is there out there like this?
it's very singular. It's very clunky. It feels a lot like a
Yep.
video game. Some of the dialogue is ridiculous.
Some of the
Um,
graphics are very video gamey.
Oof, that
Some of the-
first graphics like display.
It gets away with it in design, though, I feel.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous film. Beautifully shot and so interesting in its design. Just a quick bit of backstory for me. I'd never seen this film, but one of my earliest horror memories is Silent Hill, the original video game on
Okay.
PS1. I had a demo disc for it that was so traumatizing to us at a sleepover one night that we like destroyed the disc and threw it
Wow.
away. And I swear to God, I had a dream about that disc like reconstituting in the middle of the night and flying out of the bin.
So the game freaked you the fuck out?
Hell,
What was it
yes.
in the game that freaked you out?
Everything. The
Just the
atmosphere,
atmosphere.
is so wonderful, and they capture it quite well in the movie. I don't think they lean on the setting quite hard enough in this film, but I just love this idea of this cursed town that is based on a real location in the States, if you guys are aware, a just perpetually burning town. And the video game has that because if you guys remember what PS1 graphics looks like, the draw distance is very low. You can't see very far ahead of you. So that's, I guess, why they
fog.
made this very foggy game.
Yeah.
And you'd just be walking through these schools and shit, and these little imps and demons would be running around. It was just very disturbing at the time. And of course, one of my absolute favorite horror things of all time is PT.
PT.
Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro's playable teaser for what was a game that was going to be called Silent Hills, starring Norman Reedus, kind of a reboot of the series. Never happened, all fell apart, went to shit. But that one thing
Great
on
sequence.
its own is so, so outstanding.
So good.
Love playing through it. So it was cool to finally see this.
Yeah. I mean, this movie for me does a really great job of setting up atmosphere in the first half, but feels the least or the most clunky and slow and just maybe not really into it. The second half of this movie, I'm like so on board with in terms of, because once things really ramp up, then it's like, I love the aspect of this film, which is we're moving on the plot. We're getting some awesome horror scenes out. There's actual themes developing instead of just atmosphere, like that kind of aspect of it. Pretty much from when, I'd say when they get up to the church
For the first
onwards,
time, yeah.
that for me is just on point 100.
Because you're very correct. It takes a long time for it to shape up. Essentially, a lot of this film is her, wandering through this town, sort of going from day to night, trying to find the kid. And that sort of goes through one or two cycles before they get up to the church.
Like almost 3 or 4, actually.
It's a big change because it goes from pretty much an abandoned town to like this almost like post-apocalyptic.
I was like, where are these
cult
cunts?
thing.
Just stay inside, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
like the
don't
best
go
stuff's going-
venturing around.
It's a bit wild in that sense, like, and I understand why they did it in terms of the plot, because obviously the demon wanted her to go to all the all the individual places. I really feel like they could have cut out a lot of that stuff kind of before, like that first time that she gets attacked by those impy like.
Oh, now that is the bit that fucked me up the most. That was those little dudes really messed me up, bruv. Really didn't like those little
Which ones
guys.
are these?
The bad CGI.
The little screaming demon baby things at the start.
Right.
Where she's going through all the sort of mesh fencing and
yeah.
not cool, dude.
I think that there needed to be a little bit more, let's move the plot along.
How good's Pyramid Head as well? Like that scene where he's got that fuck off sword and he's like plunging it through the door.
Well, this is what I wanted to say next. In that kind of strength of this movie is the randomness afforded to it by being based off a video game, which just has a lot of ideas thrown in, and you get this creature, this Pyramid Head, who's just wandering around various parts of the movie, never shows up again in the back end. And
It's a
I,
little bit disappointing, but
yeah, but also it's like that was really random and cool that there was just this thing in this movie that they had to throw in because it's so emblematic of the series. But I don't feel like there's much of any explanation of what he is or what he's doing. He just shows up and manifests at some point, and
I think it's
it's just very striking.
what a fucking awesome scene though is
Oh,
when he
so good.
manifests behind the
Oh my god, it just
woman.
rips her skin off.
Oh, so good.
Outstanding.
Like this for me is the closest depiction of hell. You know, like just wandering through just endless, rusty, grotesque maze with this fucking unknowable entity coming for me. Like,
Do you know how thrilled I would have been if this movie had been made 10 years later?
oh, dude, there's a lot to tap into here, I feel. Like, with the right person on this, if they can shape up the plot, as you said, Connor, like, figure out, like, maybe is it more of a detective angle, or do we have just a few more little beats in there to keep
I think
things
just-
whisked along a little bit more?
You do get that detective piece with Sean Bean kind of doing his thing.
God, I had a little laugh to myself. I was just like,
His
dude,
accent?
No, just like this dude has nothing to work with in this scene. It's like Sean Bean. All right, Sean. So we're driving to Silent Hill on this shot. All right, Sean, you're rummaging through your stuff trying to find things. Like he doesn't have. There's
Sean, your wife might be a presence here, but she might not be.
yeah, like
Yeah.
he didn't have many scenes that bounce off with people, and like like he's doing what he needs to
Yeah.
do.
I think they needed a little bit like I liked that you enter the film right off the bat.
It's a great start.
Yeah.
When they're just like chasing this girl and she's on top of the weird
Yeah.
waterfall thing.
That's
But
one
this
of my
is the
least
problem,
favorite
right?
bits, to be honest. Like
'Cause
the
it's
big
just so-
waterfall, it just seems a little too fantastical in a
I
way.
just thought the setting and the camera work was so great, like throughout, and it kind of
Oh,
at the very
completely.
beginning to see the quality level that I wasn't really expecting. I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I got to say, while we're talking about Sean Bean, what a fucking twist! He does not die.
Oh yeah,
I know,
yeah.
right?
So I was looking for a cover image for Movie Book Club on Facebook. Check it out, everyone. And one of the first images in there was Sean Bean just getting absolutely bisected by some demon thing. I'm like, well, not a huge spoiler. It's Sean Bean in a movie. Of course he's going to die. And it gets to the end of the movie and he doesn't. I'm like,
What
the
movie is
fuck?
that from?
So that must be from the sequel,
Oh,
which him and Rada Mitchell are both in as well. I assume that probably happens at the beginning or something.
Right.
But I'm so sorry if I just spoiled that fucking thing. But yeah, it was kind of disappointing because I was expecting like a big twist ending. And it was just like, oh, he's fine. I did like the ending. That was cool.
Yeah. Very ambiguous.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Um,
I have no idea. Like I said, I watched this movie at like 4 a.m. So I
Yeah.
was following hazily at the best
Yeah.
of times.
So there's something that I want to really talk about, which is the most terrifying part of this film for me, and what I found to be a really interesting theme that was present last week in our movie book club. And that is this kind of puritanical cult mindset, thing.
paranoia.
Yeah, this
Burning witches.
burning witches.
Don't do it.
And I was and it as I was watching, I was like, oh my god, this is such a cool follow on from The Witch because it's a completely different style,
Mhm.
but it is talking about the same things of like this, this kind of purist or puritanical approach to the world
Yeah,
and how that inevitably has consequences that are kind of almost exact opposite of what you are trying to do by being Puritist.
Puritan. Is
Puritan?
this the same plot as Paranormal?
Might be, yeah. It is a little bit like that sense of they in their attempt to kind of control and fight against the unknown, they ended up creating their own hell.
yeah.
What's that quote about, fighting monsters? Be careful lest you become a
Something
monster
like
as
that,
well.
yeah.
I'm like, it's pretty apt.
Whereas this one or the witch is the exact same. They couldn't think beyond their own
Yeah,
limited scope, and as such drove their daughter into witchcraft.
yeah.
So
Yeah, they sort of created the horror they were trying to fight.
Except in this one, they create a giant barbed wire spider monster, which was
I
fucking
loved that.
awesome.
Oh.
Just shredding people. It's so good.
and this is also something that I found really fascinating about this film, which I gotta say I'm a huge fan of, is that the demon ended up being, in a lot of ways, the protagonist
Mm.
of this. Like that aspect of it was really cool. I thought, there's the normal, plot line is that demon bad, find a way to defeat the demon.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it's, these fucking cultists bad. Let's use the demon. And you get that kind of, like almost Schadenfreude, or like the kind of, catharsis of watching all these people get what,
Yes.
in a lot of ways they
100%.
deserve.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting things you mentioned there, but I think like the cult-like aspect, and even now, like in 2020, like just the paranoia and the way people draw conclusions, like correlation versus causation. Like, there's so much to unpack there, but I think one of the most cathartic and satisfying moments is that leader and just the barbed wires just going through her whole body. And this film gets away with a lot through design. I feel like, yes, it is CG and it does look like a video game in a lot of ways, but it is so well designed. It looks still really great to me.
I think so. I watched it on my laptop, so I kind of broke my own rules. But the CGI looked like CGI, but
Yeah.
I thought it was so effectively kind of done that it didn't bother
Just
me
the way
at all.
everything moves and the shot composition and
there's some good practical stuff in there.
The
Like the
nurses-
aforementioned skin ripping, the hilarious
nurses.
sexy nurses, sexy demon
Fuck.
nurses. That's what I'm talking about in terms of being based on like a Japanese video game, because you can't put that in any other movie because it's like, what the fuck is happening? It's interesting.
I have to say, for this film, the two scariest parts for me were when anything to do with the group of the cultists or the Puritans, like that kind of group, like paranoia, like where they could just grab you at any moment, that really freaked me out.
Yeah.
And also the fact that they're roasting people, that fucked me up.
Slow roasting people.
Dude, when she got
Oh.
roasted at the top there, that was rough.
That
the cop,
when I think about this movie, that is the scene.
it's
when you
it's
see the-
nihilistic, huh?
When you see the little girl and she looks like a fucking charcoal chicken,
Yeah.
like they've been holding her above coals.
It's
It's like,
fucking
oh
horrific.
my God, yeah.
And just like the scenes of her, quote unquote surviving, is just really terrifying.
Just when she's getting the ladders going across, in like the thought, I'm just thinking this character's thoughts, like, I haven't
Fuck.
done anything.
Yeah,
Mm.
Like these people, I'm gonna die.
Mm.
I think
and
this
not in
film
a good way.
really conveyed that effectively.
The one thing that that someone told me, I have no idea if this is true, but someone told me that she would have died of lack of oxygen before she
Oh.
like roasted like
Oh
that.
yeah,
And for some reason
that was
that
comforting.
that was comforting.
yeah.
Because I was like, it's
Thank
out of
God.
all this, like getting your skin ripped off like a bloody suit
Yeah,
by a pyramid head is not
Yeah.
something that I'm ever going to have to worry about.
Yeah.
But
2020.
yeah, but some crazy fanatics, roasting someone alive
yeah.
is not outside the bounds
Yeah.
of reality, and so
Yeah.
that's why
you
I
got
think
some
it,
weird friends.
Yeah.
You can see that
Yeah.
happening.
I think that's why
Like us.
I'm gonna come
Lock the
back and just
doors.
holding Ben over the stove.
Yeah.
Like, it is gonna take longer, granted,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Um,
I think that
That
somebody's calling me.
you know what I really wanted more of? I wanted more follow up with like the orphanage and the cop, because the cop basically tells him to fuck off,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of like loose ends in this
Yep.
that I felt like they did such a cool wrap up of like the cult and the church and all that I kind of wanted there to be some wrap up with the cop, like, because they said there's some good people as well.
Yeah.
Think of the
I
cop,
quite
it's like-
liked the ambiguity in this film. I like the Japanese sort of don't explain it all away. Like it is what it is. But I will say this film, as I was watching this film, I remembered that there were certain things this film compelled me to do after I was done watching it.
Just roast
That's
people.
concerning.
And one of them was start a death cult. No, but I definitely really questioned religion after this. And I tell you what, this is probably sounds a bit fucked up to say, but one of the most formative films in me being, somewhere between agnostic and atheist. Not even that I classify myself in that way, but I'm not subscribing to some kind of religion. This was definitely a film that pushed me in a certain way and appealed to my sensibilities whilst totally terrifying me and having this lasting impact. So it's sort of this weird
All in
combination
one.
of things that it
You
influenced
should
me.
really tweet the director of this movie. I don't imagine he gets a lot of very heartfelt feedback on this one.
But I think
Yeah,
it is
honestly.
really interesting because I think it also is kind of a movie for the age because more and more people are kind of fitting into their own echo chambers. They're becoming more and more staunch and fanatical in their views and less kind of open to other ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah,
just
Gabe, right.
religious thinking, right? It's people are finding the ability to become entrenched in any other kind of ideologies as well. So I think this movie is a really good kind of like through the vehicle of religion and all that, kind of saying this is what happens when you become a puritanical. This is when it happens when you become fanatical about
Yeah.
anything.
Don't be a dick.
It's more or less it.
You'll get barbed wire all up through you.
Glad we all enjoyed that.
As soon as her legs got pulled apart, the barbed wire started shooting.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, I can see why people hate this movie.
Yeah.
I was not scared by this film at all.
Yeah.
I would have been if I saw it when I was your age when you saw it.
And like, I know we all know this, but like the sounds being in the dark room of the cinema, like,
Yeah.
I remember how much this fucked me up, man.
Yeah. I found it mostly to be kind of like over the top and funny, but fun.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed it and could see myself watching this again easily. Also, just before we sign off, I really liked the score, which is apparently directly lifted from the video game.
Yeah.
But fantastic. So
Yeah.
good.
Because
Score was
it's a
dope.
French director, and I think he sent like an audition tape to the creators of the game, then which gave him the rights to
Okay.
for the movie.
Nice.
He lifted like it was very much from the game.
Apparently, he's a big fan. Yeah.
Huge fan.
I've never properly played it. in my-
So one of
there's
the
a new one
best
coming
video
out.
game adaptations, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a new one coming out. There's a
Is it
well, it was
Silent
announced
Hill?
before
game
COVID.
or movie?
No, movie. By the same director. Because
Oh.
the second one wasn't directed by him.
Okay.
Um
And is this in the same timeline or is it a reboot?
I don't know. It was initially announced, I think, like beginning of this year before COVID, and he basically said that there's a script and that he would be
Interesting.
interested in doing it. I don't know if it's been greenlit,
Oh,
but there is definitely talk about a new Silent
Okay.
Hill film.
Cool.
okay.
No idea where that is now because of
I think that this has so much opportunity. There's a lot to mine here. And if you get the
Mm.
right emotional beats on this, yeah, and it's a horror movie, it's genre, but it doesn't have to be some fucking Godfather. Like, it doesn't have to be this sort of like character study, but just a few little emotional beats in there
get someone
sprinkled
that
in.
is good with effects. Get someone that's good with like practical and set design. I mean, it's such a trope, but like get Del Toro on this. I think he would be fucking. I would
You
want.
almost want like a new age Clive Barker on this. Like, it's got a Hellraiser-y aspect. Like, you want someone who's a little bit nasty. Like, who did
Not
Bone
afraid
Tomahawk?
Ooh.
S. Craig Zala.
Maybe not the best choice because he's
fuck it, do it.
probably a little bit too like smash you over the head. Like, this needs a little bit of that otherworldly, spiritual Japanese aspect to it, but something there, someone who's got a little bit of a nasty edge to them.
Yeah.
I think this is my 4th week saying this, but I really need to bring you that book that the Army Hammer film Wounds was
Oh, yeah,
adapted
yeah,
from
yeah.
because I think this could be one of the stories in it.
Cool.
Wounds, 6 stories from the border of hell.
Yeah.
It's just stories about hell kind of invading the
Sick.
world, and this really feels exactly
cool.
like that. Like what you were saying before about just being in this place with these, creatures stalking and just disturbing shit. Yeah. Anyway,
So cool. So cool. Glad everyone enjoyed this. Blair Witch.
On to Blair Witch the Blair Witch Project.
yes,
The Blair Witch Project.
my first
I-
time.
I
Yeah,
had
same.
said that I had watched this long ago. I was mistaken. I've watched which I think is the second one.
Book of Shadows.
I can't, maybe.
Blair,
Oh, you're thinking about Blair Witch from like 2016, aren't you?
No, it would have been before that.
the second one's called Book of Shadows.
Book of Shadows?
It's meant to be one of the worst.
I've seen
It
that
is.
one as well.
That's so weird.
The one with the owl. That's
Uh,
all I remember from it. There was a fucking owl adventure.
Yeah. And it's really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
Completely different style. Completely
different style. That's what I had thought of it.
Book of Shadows.
I'm always really skeptical on the found footage genre.
And I don't know why. I love it, man.
I just think that it can too easily be a gimmick, right? Like it's just
But it is inherently a gimmick, you know.
it
Isn't
is,
it?
but I mean, when I talk about it being a gimmick in the negative light, it means that the movie is relying on the gimmick to get across, right? You know, this is the cool thing about this film is that it is found footage, as opposed to using that gimmick to further on a story or an atmosphere or something like that.
When was the last fucking found footage movie? It's been a fucking while, hasn't it? Was that Shyamalan one was the last one?
Chronicle was one.
The Visit.
I mean, that was Chronicles 2013. This was
Cloverfield
2016.
was
Cloverfield
when?
was what, 2011?
No.
2008, maybe.
No.
2008.
That
Yeah,
can't
you're-
be.
Cloverfield's
you're
old
old.
as shit.
You're old, bro.
Jesus
Welcome.
Christ.
Welcome.
I mean, I suppose you could say the Zoom horrors or the Skype horrors or whatever they are probably the new found footage films.
Similar deal.
Very similar aspect to it.
This is of a different era, though, isn't it? This is
This is the movie
This is
that
proto.
popularized-
This is proto found footage. I feel.
This is the movie that popularized.
Didn't invent it, but sure as
Yeah,
hell
because
popularized it.
the one that is kind of often credited with inventing it is Cannibal Holocaust, I think.
1980, and that really does follow it really does set the template for this movie in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
I do have to say though, this movie, I'll say surprisingly, I really enjoyed this film
Cool.
in terms of it might have just been my expectations. It might have been, God, it could have been any number of things, but I just found that this film hit the mark for me. You know, I found myself hating certain characters and
All of them.
and hating the situation, and that was where the horror was. It wasn't so much in the noises or even the climax at the end.
You're a big
climax-
outdoors guy. I can just see you watching a movie where people get lost in the woods, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well, it's I mean,
What a nightmare.
being
No,
with-
he just could be like, that's technically not what you would do.
well, no, because for me it was like knowing that this is. It's so easy for someone to just think that, oh, I'm just going out into the woods and I'll be fine, and to not think twice. Like that kind of arrogance and that kind of like flippant attitude to this kind of stuff is what is genuinely terrifying to me. Like this woman kind of going in being like, I don't need to use the map. I know where I'm going. Like not having a plan on
Yeah.
what happens if they're getting out. Like
That's
that-
the scary part.
that for me was just like, and then just the internal fighting and like the frustration and that for me.
It felt very much like a road trip or something.
Yeah, I mean,
We've all
like
been
it
on.
just we've all been on that kind of when you're in close proximity with someone for a long period of time, and you're like, you just need to shut the fuck up
Yeah.
right now, or I'm gonna explode. Like, I mean, we've all kind of been in that scenario, once or twice. So yeah, I found that their ability to kind of convey that atmosphere and that sense was really cool. Was very well done. The other aspects of filmmaking, plot, character development, things like that, were certainly lacking.
Who needs them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys know like every beat of this movie going in? Because having watched it now, I feel like I did. I feel like I've actually seen a lot of it
Okay.
just here and there in like clip.
I haven't
things,
seen
but-
it, but nothing really surprised me.
Because I think I'd heard very much about the ending and just finding all the weird structures and stuff. This movie is just so contextual
I
to
think
the time it
that's-
came
yeah.
out, how it was marketed, how it was released.
First viral marketing for a movie, they actually created like a little mini website.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Um,
and they really stuck to their guns trying to fool people that
Yeah.
this was real footage.
Had missing posters outside festival
Mm.
screenings of it.
You use the real names of the actors in the piece. Told them
Clever.
to just disappear for a while when the movie came out. Made for $60,000, made $250 million.
And they sold back the camera that they used. They refunded the camera that they used for production.
Mm.
That's how fucking like frugal they were on this side.
Wow.
So good, yeah.
But I think what's so interesting and why I call it proto found footage is found footage still has so many elements of just general cinema in it, like the general beats that this doesn't have, like, music, sound effects, plot. This is so bare bones and stripped back, and like it feels like archival footage you would pull from like a police investigation or something. So it's missing that entertainment aspect to it in a way, and it's missing the genre conventions, or that typical movie plot A, part A, part B, part C, that we sort of come to expect in a way. And it's sort of just like it's an artifact of the time.
Something that at least the first 3 Paranormal Activity movies did that I really liked was I just thought the characters were kind of entertaining. I think it was mostly improv they were doing in those movies, but I just thought they were kind of fun to watch, and maybe not likable people, but entertaining people.
The exact opposite of likable.
Yeah,
I wanted to punch all of them.
Yeah, this movie I think was trying to go towards that. They had they were trying to make these people to some degree. The whole first half hour is just them pretty much going around talking to people and being engaging enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just in a post Paranormal Activity world, which also has really quite in depth special effects and just big proper scares. Whereas all this kind of has is just the vibe and the eeriness to it. It just doesn't really have much to offer.
And I think people shit on the newer Blair Witch that came out. I think it was cool.
Is that found footage?
Yeah.
I want to check it out.
But it was definitely more to the modern day. There's jump scares, there's sound effects, there's a CGI witch at the end. I don't think that's a spoiler. Like it's a lot more like horror movie.
Yeah, I mean this is very much like it's a cool little side detour. Like it's an interesting film that I'm glad that I watched.
It's almost like an experiment,
Yeah, but it's not something that I would kind of go back to. Right? Like this is
it's a one and done
gimmicky side of it, but it's just scraped by for me.
Would have been amazing to see in a cinema in 1999, I'm sure. I've heard so many people describe that last scene to me and how disturbing it was at the time. And it's nothing to have watched that for me today. Admittedly, I was sitting on the couch here looking at my phone.
Do you know how many people told me about that final scene? Dude, like built up way too high, stack them up, and it came crushing down because it never had, like, people telling me about it was 10 times scarier than me actually watching the scene itself.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to tell these guys how to make a movie, but I don't know, put a little bit of a witch in there,
Well, Emily, there was one shot, but the cameraman didn't look over to the left at one point, so they just didn't reshoot the scene.
I've heard a lot about the making of this movie, which is really interesting, which is they would kind of give these people a general outline of like how they were going to do a scene and then just really fuck with them in the woods. So like a lot of the terror was kind of real.
Right.
And I think that comes across as well. But yeah, I think as a piece of film history, it's interesting. I can see why a lot of people are really turned off by this genre. If motion sickness is your thing, this is probably one of the worst versions of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think my final thought is just that this is a movie we disagree about a little bit, but the Rafe Spall film, The Ritual on Netflix, which is basically about a bunch of people lost in the woods in a witchcraft sort of situation. It's not found footage, but I just think that movie is absolutely fantastic, and this movie doesn't have any reason to exist when that does.
I agree.
Unfortunately, in when you just put them next to each other,
and the way the sort of what's the word? How discombobulated and confused and whatnot those people feel in The Ritual, I feel is really way more effective than a lot of other of these types of Lost in the Woods films. Maybe I don't love everything to do with the monster, but to be honest, I've actually been kind of compelled to watch that film again recently because now that I know where it goes, maybe I'll be able to enjoy it a bit more.
Hell yeah.
In the back half.
Yeah,
Cool.
I liked it even more the second time I saw it.
Yeah, solid to watch Blair Witch.
Cool.
What do we got next week?
What's next week for us, Ben?
So next week I will give you something that you may absolutely despise. Sorry, I keep doing this to you, but I just didn't put a lot of thought into this one.
Fuck yeah.
But I have been thinking about doing this one for a while. So we'll be watching Yorgos Lanthimos's movie that I can't remember the name of, Killing of a Sacred Deer,
Can you say good
starring
dear?
Colin Farrell.
And
yes.
the weird looking dude.
And the fucked up Ty Sheridan looked like kid. Barry Keoghan.
Can you imagine like that's like your defining feature and like everyone knows who you're talking about?
Yeah, the guy from Breaking Bad, Matt Damon.
Oh, yeah.
Except he's
Steve
better
Buscemi,
actor.
like the guy with the weird eyes.
Okay, The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
yeah.
I'm keen on that. I've wanted to watch that for a while.
This is an unpleasant movie. So
Okay.
Is it
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Oh, we're not doing
possibly-
a double feature anymore, are we?
that's it.
Oh, that's right. So I was waiting for the second one. I was
Yeah.
like, come on.
possibly Mandalorian episode 2 review.
I will commit to have seen.
I'll have seen that tonight, I think.
win.
How good.
That was
gents.
good. We're ahead of schedule.
Very
Yeah.
proud of you.
Oh well. Diaz for next week.
Pew pew pew.